Zoom slideshow. Oh. Can you see my screen? Ken?
Yep.
Allison?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, well, while I'm trying to get this going, I'm just going to introduce myself. So I'm Kimberly Murphy, and I'm the Manager of Procurement Engagement with the province of Nova Scotia. I am responsible for ensuring that anyone who's interested in engaging with public procurement, either our client departments or our public sector entities, our own procurement staff, and you, our suppliers, have the information that you need to either bid on work, find information about how we buy, what we buy, and make sure that it's easily available for you. So today, I'm just going to start our show. Doesn't seem to be working for me, but I'm going to get through it. So today, I'm going to talk about procurement, and it's not working, Allison. I'm just going to close it out and start again, if that's okay. There we go. There we go. It's all good. So what we're going to talk about this morning is just a little bit about Nova Scotia procurement, how the government of Nova Scotia procures, including some standing offers, high value, low value opportunities, how you can compete, and some of the information that we have available to you on an ongoing basis. So a little bit about Nova Scotia procurement and what we do. We are a division under the Department of Service Nova Scotia and Internal Services, and that makes us a government entity, which means we are bound by specific acts, trade agreements, and business ethics, which were used to create our Nova Scotia Sustainable Procurement Policy. And on our website, procurement.novascotia.ca, is where you can find many guides, information, and most importantly, current tender opportunities for all public sector entities in Nova Scotia. What our job is to inform and guide all government departments, boards, agencies, and commissions who are looking to procure in a unique, creative, and sustainable manner for work that is of a complex nature, while maintaining open and fair processes that maximize competition while supporting our environment, economy, and society, all with the goal of obtaining best value for the province. And so one of our most prominent jobs is to ensure and to facilitate the high value procurement purchasing process for our clients. So that means anything in a specific dollar value, we'll get to those in a bit, we have to publicly tender. So some examples here are when Public Works, so that's our transportation group, when they need to buy snow plows or build new schools, they must work with us to facilitate that process. So they're essentially the subject matter experts on the goods and services that they're procuring, but we are the ones that help them put the processes around that. And then another example would be Western Regional Center for Education. They are a municipal entity, so they facilitate the purchasing process internally and not with procurement, but they still have to post their tenders on our website. So what do we buy? That's the question a lot of people ask. And I can say we buy almost anything, everything, from construction services to fleet and vehicle, to building roads and highways, to maintaining those roads and highways, building schools, and then to outfit those schools with furniture, fixtures, to maintain those schools with janitorial goods and services and property maintenance, and anything pretty much in between. So consumables, printing, all of the general commonly used goods that governments use within our own buildings to help us function. So office supplies, stationery, printing, sometimes clothing for our personnel and for those people that work with and reside within our institutions. And I can say definitively that anything we don't buy, either the municipality buys or the federal government buys. And Paul will talk to you about what the federal government buys. So we buy, how we buy. We buy using standing offers. We buy over threshold by going out to tender. So we're looking for our suppliers to provide their bids through an open tendering process. And then under threshold or low value, we can procure right at the department level. And so standing offers are a continuous offer from a pre-approved supplier or suppliers to provide goods and services throughout the year as requested for a particular period of time at a predetermined price or discount, and generally within a predefined dollar limit. That's a lot of information just to say that we buy a lot of things using standing offers. And some of the examples are on the screen here. Dialysis chairs, medical devices. One of the municipalities is looking for some professional services. And then there are lots of times where trades for construction are on standing offers, and again for professional services, and this would be for an IT system. So we do use standing offers quite often, and that helps us achieve best value through volume discounts and the continuity of suppliers. But we have to publicly tender them so that you're aware of the opportunities that exist. And in doing so, we've also created some standing offers that have ongoing onboarding. And what that means is that throughout the year or at specific times of the year, you as suppliers can access these standing offers. So you don't necessarily have to respond to them at the time that they're posted. These are listed on our website under current standing offers. And you will see that they have ongoing onboarding listed with them. And once you click on that, it'll open up into more information, and then you can further drill down and get to a PDF document that will give you the information that you need. Some of our standing offers are managed by FlexTrack, which is a third-party managed service provider who has been formally awarded a tender through the formal processes. And their job is to administer the standing offers for us. So on behalf of government, they take care of the contract signing, ensuring that the resources of all of the suppliers are listed, their websites are available, company profiles are there, so that when I or anybody else in government needs to buy anything, they use FlexTrack to source the suppliers that are on those lists. And some of the items that are available on our standing offers through FlexTrack include temporary services, learning and development services, executive search, managed service provider for contingent labor. That used to be years ago called our consulting services standing offer. So many professional services are incorporated into here. Communication services, and those ones I'll talk about in a minute, but by going to the ongoing onboarding, you'll get to a place where they'll show you the information, and it's really, really simple just to email FlexTrack and provide them your details and your interest in becoming one of the standing offer suppliers. And as I mentioned, Communications Nova Scotia is an entity within our government, and they take care of all of our internal and external communication. They have a team right in staff that can do a lot of the work in-house. However, there are times when either there are pressing projects such as Fiona or any other COVID that may have taken them off their regular course of action. So they would have had to hire externally to provide the services to complete the work that our departments need. So we'll move on to high value opportunities. And what we mean here is anything over $30,300 for goods, anything over $121,200 for services and construction. And if you're familiar with procurement, you'll know that these values are much higher than they used to be, which is a good thing in that under these thresholds, departments can purchase things directly from our suppliers. So an example of a high value procurement would be the Department of Agriculture needs quotes to supply and place armor rocks for dike protection along the Knoll Shore in Hants County. So as I mentioned before, agriculture is the expert, and so therefore they would need to provide us all of the specifications, and we would then be responsible for making sure that those specifications are wrapped up in the proper procurement package to go out to public tender. And all of these public tendering opportunities are available on our procurement.novascotia.ca website. They're available for you to view at any time and to find information to bid on if you're interested. So our role as procurement in Nova Scotia is to ensure that all of the high value opportunities are posted on our website, ensuring that all tender documents are explicitly and accurately including all bid submissions, requirements, instructions, contact information, deadlines, evaluation processes, and anything that you need as a supplier to provide us the information to evaluate your bid. And our role is to evaluate all bid submissions and to assist any client departments with that. Then our role is also to notify the awarded supplier and obtain a signed contract from the awarded supplier to then engage them in starting the work that they've been hired to do. So from a supplier point of view, your role is to be sure that you're able to find the public tender opportunity, follow the rules explicitly, making sure that you're asking questions about the opportunity before the time remaining expires, which is a very, very important piece of information. We can't answer any questions or change anything after the tender closes. So always asking questions during the open period is very important. Finding and following all addenda that may be posted for the opportunity, and submitting complete compliant responses before the time remaining expires. So that could be making sure that you've signed your bid, you've attached the correct documents, that you've done everything you need to do to be considered compliant. So who do we do work for? We manage the procurement for departments, and there's 19 of those for the provincial government. We assist when required with agencies, boards, and commissions. Oops. And there's over 100 of those in the province. And then we've got 2 health authorities that we work with for their high value procurement. And those include 40 hospitals. So that's quite a lot of folks that we work with to ensure that they're getting their tenders posted in the right place and on time. Public sector entities, which we referred to in the past as MASH, include municipalities and towns. So there's 51 of those, which is a lot for a small little province like Nova Scotia. We've got 11 academic institutions, 8 centers, regional school centers, and just an example of how many schools are in each center in the Annapolis Valley Regional Center. There's 40 schools, so if you times that by 80 or by 8, and then some of our regions have larger numbers of schools, that's quite a lot of schools that require goods and services to keep them functioning. And again, all of our tenders are posted here on our website. And this is just a note here to say that federal government offices do not post their tenders on our website. They post on their federal site, which Paul will talk to you about. And again, this is just to reinforce that there are a huge amount of opportunities on our website for public sector opportunities. There are today, in fact, I looked on the website, and I think the Nova Scotia Community College has posted 10 tenders, 10 opportunities of many different different natures, and they're open for you to view and take a look at anytime. And this is where you would go to find our information. This is our homepage under current tenders. You would get to a page here where you can search by keyword, entity, document number, and more. I chose to search for the tenders that were issued within the last 7 days, and you can see here that there's a number of different things issued by different entities. And of all of these that are posted, only 3 are from the provincial, 4 from the provincial government. So you can see that the majority of things that get posted and are also from all of the other public sector entities across Nova Scotia. In fact, we can in an average year, post about 3,000 tenders a year. So that's quite a lot of opportunities. And when you do look at our tenders page, you will see the most recent tenders posted first. So that's a good way to get a sense of what's available currently. And I'll just quickly go through the types of tender documents that you might find. There are PDF formats. That was one of the things that was used a lot after we stopped issuing documents where people had to come into the office and pick them up. You could just download them and take a look at them. We as a government don't use those as often as we used to. We have two types of electronic bidding platforms that we use. One is BidX, and this is something that is used for infrastructure, so construction and road infrastructure mostly. And there's a fee to be part of the downloading and uploading of your tender. And those are only used for specific contracts within the province. And then another one is Ariba, which is more broadly used, and that requires you to set up a profile and click on the opportunity. It will open up into an Ariba discovery format, and that's where you would have to register as a supplier. We do have lots of resources on our website that can help through that when you get to that point, if those are the things that you're interested in. And those cover high value procurements for all of our departments and Nova Scotia health authorities. This is just an example, and I left these slides in because this is a slide deck that you will see afterwards. But this just progresses through it, and then once you've entered your information, you will get to a screen that has all of the tender details that you're looking for. It gives you the opportunity to download them, to look at them, and then to bid right into this system. So there's no more delivering paper documents to our office. It all comes to us electronically. So this low value purchases is one of the areas where folks really want to know how we do what we do, how we buy. And there are different processes for the dollar value depending on what it is that we're purchasing. So anything under $2,500, our departments all must look at standing offers first. That's mandated. And then if they can't find what they're looking for in a standing offer, they can approach a business directly and either make a purchase using a purchase order or a procurement card. This is done at the department level. There's no need for it to go through us. So that makes it quick and easy for suppliers to work with government. Anything between 2,500 and under 10,000, again, we must use standing offers. And then the next step is for departments to find either known suppliers or through reaching out to procurement, help them find suppliers that they can submit 3 quotes or solicit 3 quotes from. And during that time, we would need to know the price, the timeline, and anything else, the scope of work that we would like that supplier to do. Those quotes are sent into the person who's requested them. They would review them on their own, and they would then contract with that person. And invoicing or purchase orders are then set up after that. So anything between the higher end of the low value and the top end or the low end of the high value figures, again, we need to use standing offers. The second step would be to use something called an invitational quote competition, which is sort of like a really robust 3 quotes where we don't need to go to public tender, but we need to have more documentation in the request that we send out. And there's a little bit more formality around it. There's minimum 10 calendar days for you to respond. And again, it's done in like I said, a more formal way. So it is facilitated through procurement, and it's done through Ariba. So that's why it's important for you to get yourself set up in Ariba if you are interested in doing work with the government of Nova Scotia. So the Nova Scotia Sustainable Procurement Policy must be followed in any case, whether it's low value, high value. And this policy has been aligned with acts and trade agreements and business ethics that all public sectors must follow in Canada, no matter where we are. And so our client departments must follow and keep records of all applicable procurement processes used. And there always has to be a separation of duties. So whoever is engaging with the supplier isn't the one who's going to pay them. Just that's for compliance and ensuring that we're just making everything as open and transparent as possible. And one other note here is that all public sector purchases are subject to audits and FOIPOP inquiries and hopefully this never happens, but legal action if there are any instances where things appear to be unfair. So it's really important that you understand where you stand as a supplier. So selling to government is, it's a piece of information that is more detailed on our website. You'll get this PDF afterwards, and then you're always welcome to contact us directly if you have any questions. We've got lots of guides about e-procurement and videos and how to get into that if you're interested. Supplier training, something like today, or if you do have individual questions, you can always contact us. And then there's support and another tons, which is our notification service, which I'll get to in a minute. So on our website, there is our main page, there's a link to selling to government, and then there's more information about supplier training here. Just an FYI, we are currently updating our website, so this may look like this now, but in the next month or so, you'll see something new. And so supplier training is here. And there's another little video that we have about marketing your business to the public sector. So that might be something that you'd be interested in taking a look at after. All of our resources for e-bidding are on a single page. So you'll find an e-bidding guide, an actual webinar, which will walk you through it, and then individual videos on the different pieces of our e-bidding platform, Ariba. And then there's always support. If you have any questions about Ariba, we can either actually answer them directly, or we can forward them off to the technical support folks of Ariba, depending on what the issue is. Now, the Tender Opportunity Notification Service is something that's free. It's one of the easiest ways to access information on opportunities that are posted daily. This is something that you can sign up to do on your own. Currently, it's done through Access Nova Scotia. And so you would just follow the instructions listed on our website and log in. And what it does is it allows you to receive notifications of public sector procurement opportunities that match the specific goods and or services that your business offers. Again, I mentioned there's no charge to it, and a little email will pop into your inbox between 6:30 and 7 every morning for the categories that you've selected. It's a great way just to see what's going on in the province if this is something that's new to you. So this brings me to the end of my presentation. I know I've gone through it fairly quickly, but we do have Paul, who's ready and eager to get his information to you as well. So I would suggest these are a few things that you can do when you are on your own and when you're looking at government work, and that is to register for tons. So to get your notifications as soon as possible. Register for Ariba Discovery because, like I said, even some of the lower value invitational competitions go through Ariba. When you do register for Ariba Discovery, there is the opportunity also to be made aware of opportunities that exist outside of government. All of the postings and things that we put into Ariba are free for you to download and to look at and to bid on, so there's no charge for that. Just take a look at our procurement policies, just so you can have an idea of what we need to do to be compliant. And also you can take a look at our current and historic tenders. You can actually do a little bit of market research to see who has, which departments have been procuring what types of goods and services, and similar information is available for all of the municipalities. We do post up to 7 years worth of tender information, so that's a good piece of market research that you can do. And then understanding how you can bid, so selling to government, things like this, and then there's other specific types of training that you can take if you have more in-depth questions. And that's the end of my presentation. My name is Kimberly Murphy again. This is an email that you can reach us if you have any questions, and we'd be more than happy to walk you through procurement at the provincial level. So I'm going to stop sharing. There we go.
Good morning. My name is Paul Gerin, and I'm a procurement outreach officer with the federal government with the Department of Procurement Assistance Canada. And it's just going to be a moment there to modify my screen here. So previously, our department, Procurement Assistance Canada, was known by the acronym OSME, the Office of Small Medium Enterprises. So talking with our suppliers over the last few years, they realized that what we provided was more assistance, and the name needed to reflect a little bit more on the procurement side. So we did speak out with community organizations and suppliers, and felt that there was a need to rebrand and to re-identify. So Procurement Assistance Canada is still the same provider of services. We're just known now by either Procurement Assistance Canada or PAC. So getting started. So a lot of the information, both at a federal and a provincial level, do overlap in terms of standing offers as well as general information in terms of selling to government. What will be a little bit different will be some of the thresholds and some of the resources that you may wish to look at as well. So in terms of getting started, our office is here to assist, engage, inform, as well as reduce barriers. So in terms of reducing barriers, it's working with organizations like the Western Wren, as well as with the province, as well as with organizations and community groups to identify any barriers that suppliers are having, and then communicate that back to policy as well as back to departments and agencies to allow them to either modify or to identify the barriers prior. That way, when they do put out a request, that it does identify it reduces the barriers for suppliers. To engage is to actively talk with suppliers at any point. And our office is there to assist. So we do have a staff of 5 outreach officers here in Atlantic that help small businesses with the procurement process in terms of questions, how to navigate the various websites, and how to find opportunities. And then we also do information sessions similar to the webinar, both in person and virtually. So as you may be aware, the federal government is one of the largest buyers of goods and services in Canada. You also, though, have to look at the government as various departments and agencies. So each department and agency does buy a little bit differently, but most of the contracts, when we think of the federal government, are lower dollar value. So we do have large purchases. As an example, the shipbuilding would be a fairly large contract, but most of our contracts are usually under $1 million, and 75% of those are actually lower than $1 million. So it does allow for suppliers to identify their ability to provide their resources to either one department or to multiple departments based on their capacity. So how much does the government buy? So over 500,000 of the contracts over every year are lower dollar value, and they are actually purchased directly by departments using, similar to the province, credit card transactions. So departments, depending on their threshold, can actually reach out to suppliers and make purchases directly. We spend approximately just over $24 billion a year on goods, services, as well as construction and maintenance projects historically. 21 and 22 were a little bit different in terms of some of the expenditures that we have, but we do buy literally everything from paper clips, probably not as many as a lot of us now work from home or now returning to the office, to worship. So we do buy everything from small dollar value items to very large dollar items. So in terms of selling to the government, there is that distinction that Public Services and Procurement Canada is the main procurement arm for the federal government. So similar to the province, we do centralize our procurement process where our department will work on behalf of a department or agency for the high dollar value. The lower dollar value thresholds, then departments and agencies will either put the tender out directly or will put a request out to suppliers locally to actually identify the opportunities. All of our procurement is open, fair and transparent, so it does allow suppliers to have an equal chance in doing business with the federal government. We do follow all of the rules in terms of Treasury Board and policies regarding the Government of Canada's procurement process. So there are some initiatives to identify and increase the diversity of bidders. So recently there has been the procurement strategy for Indigenous businesses, where all federal departments are mandated to have a minimum of 5% of their contracts going forward to be awarded to Indigenous businesses. What does that mean for non-Indigenous businesses? It does allow them to still go forward with open procurement, but it also allows for businesses who may not have their own capacity or Indigenous businesses that may not have capacity to actually to do joint ventures. So as long as the Indigenous business is the 51% of the joint venture, then we would look at it as an Indigenous purchase, even though there may be non-Indigenous businesses also working on the project. By having diversity of bidders, it does allow us to do better buying. And we are also looking to do green procurement. So we are looking to ensure that if something is available in Atlantic Canada, we would purchase from Atlantic Canada versus purchasing it from the Western Canada or internationally. So a lot of our procurement strategy will look at buying local, even though we do have mandates under international trade agreements. So similar to the province, we do have delegated authorities within various departments and agencies. So departments and agencies can purchase directly from buyers up to $25,000 worth of goods and up to $40,000 for services. For services that are within the construction, then it does allow for those departments to do services up to 2 million and construction projects up to 400,000. So anything above that, then they would go back to our main department to actually work with that department or agency in terms of doing the overall purchase. Below that, the department will still use our tendering site, but they will be the main contracting authority for the procurement. And it's good to know the levels because it does allow you to know at what level you're speaking with a department or a centralized department, or if you're talking to the main department with PSPC. So when we think of low dollar value, unfortunately, we think of low dollar value a little bit in different contexts when we think of small businesses. We're not trying to say that 25,000 is a low value, but in terms of the overall purchases for the federal government, it is a smaller value. So for contracts below 25,000 for goods and 40,000 for services, departments and agencies can do similar to the province. They can reach out to single suppliers to see if they're on a standing offer, to then award them a contract very specific to the good or service that relates to that need, as long as it's below 25,000 or 40,000. If the value was, say, 26,000 for the good, then it would have to go to tender, and it would allow for other businesses to identify that they provide the service. Below 25,000, departments will actually reach out to 3 or more suppliers and actually request a quote. A little bit similar to the province, but it'll look at what is your cost, what are the deliverables, and are you able to provide the product or service. The purchasing department would then look at that based on your submission and then go with one of the 3 or 4 submissions and award the contract. And similar to 40 for services, it is up to 40,000. So it does allow businesses and organizations locally to actually reach out to that supplier directly. One of the things when we go forward is how do we find those suppliers? So we do have a database that we do encourage suppliers to register for. You can register without being actively selling to government. So it does provide at least your business being known as a supplier, or to be pre-qualified as a supplier for pro services. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in one of the next slides. So again, 25,000 for goods and 40,000 for services. And similar to the province, we do similar types of purchasing when it's above that. When it's above the thresholds, we do either an invitation to tender, a request for proposal, a request for a standing offer, or a request for a supply arrangement. So invitation to tender is very specific. So you're the supplier submitting the lowest bid and complies with all of the mandatory requirements would be awarded the contract. A request for proposal is similar, where generally is used for goods above 25,000, where the selection of the supplier cannot be made based on the lowest price. The request for proposal will do a fuller evaluation of technical criteria, years of experience, and will identify very specific things within a document that the supplier must identify and respond to. If you do not respond to all of the requests within the proposal, then the department would actually not evaluate your proposal. So when you are looking at requests for proposals, it's important to ensure that you answer all of the technical and all of the criteria materials that are being asked. When we identify for a standing offer, it is that similar to the province. It's when we pre-identify supplies and services at a very specific rate with a supplier. So it then allows departments and agencies to then go to those suppliers to say, we now have a purchase that we would like to make against the standing offer for a specific quantity. So the supplier has already pre-identified the cost per unit or the cost per hour, and then they would then sign a contract with that department to deliver that product or service based on the standing offer that the federal government has for that product. So our department through PSPC would have the standing offer, but it could be the RCMP looking to purchase out of the standing offer. Fisheries and Oceans purchasing, the Department of Agriculture here in Atlantic Canada, the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency. So the standing offer is used by all of the departments and agencies to ensure that they are identifying the lowest product, or sorry, they're purchasing from the pre-qualified supplier based on the original standing offer. Some of the standing offers that we have are for products that that companies have pre-made. So it's something that you're not having to worry about having to build a product prior. It's usually used for a lot of your products or services that you would already be have on stock. So you're not looking to add to your inventory. A request for a supply arrangement is a little bit similar, but it is that it's a supplier arrangement used to solicit arrangements from suppliers on a specific quantity as well as a specific price. So again, it allows suppliers to be pre-identified and be pre-qualified with an arrangement with the federal government. That way, when we do need to purchase that item, then rather than going through a whole RFP, we're then able to reach out to the supplier and say, based on the supply arrangement that you have with us, we would now like to action and identify a contract. Supply arrangements are usually published yearly, sometimes quarterly, but it does allow, similar to the province, for businesses to become pre-qualified and to do their submission if they've already passed. So supply arrangements are usually for an extended period, but we do update the suppliers on a continuous basis. So there is continuous intake for supply arrangements. And then the tender notice will indicate the method of procurement when being used when it's online. So this will be more reflective for all of the submissions when they're above the 25,000 for goods and the 40,000 for services. So we do have a variety of supplies. One of the things is, prior to being registered on various databases, we do have a supplier registration. So we do encourage businesses to register with our supplier registration. There, we actually provide you with what we call a procurement number. For those of you who already have an existing business and either have payroll or are incorporated or have an HST account, it is the same number, but it's just identifying your procurement activity now with our department, being a registered company. Once you're registered with our supplier database, you're then able to register for pro services, which is for IT and non-IT professionals, task-based informatics professional services, so it's specific to IT, task and solution professional services, so human resources, business consulting, change management, project management. We do currently have one for construction called Select, but not all of the regions are using it. So they are re-identifying the aspects of the Select database in terms of whether or not it'll be used going forward in 2023. We also have a directory for linguistic service providers. So there, if your business provides translation, interpretation, terminology, or word processing, then that is something that the federal government would look at. The federal government does most of their documents both in English and French, but when it deals with international trade, then we do look at translation and interpretation in a lot of languages across the globe. So if English and French are not your first or second language, then there is that opportunity to provide translation or interpretation services in your other language or your first language. And then we also do have a directory for temporary help services. So when the government is looking to staff for very specific tasks below 48 weeks, then they can actually look at a temporary HR provider to actually provide that HR support or that temporary help support. Anything over 48 weeks, then the requirements actually change, where at that point the department needs to actually hire someone either as a term or a casual and actually have a staff, an employee versus using an external provider. Excuse me. There are some instances where the federal government unfortunately cannot use a competitive process, and unfortunately we've dealt with that just recently with Fiona. So with any emergency needs, then the federal government can actually look at contacting a single supplier to actually provide the services directly. So for Fiona, if DFO required a very specific service for one of their boats, rather than putting out a tender or do a request for 3 or 4 suppliers that needed to be evaluated, they would be able to say, okay, we need somebody to come in and fix this hydraulic. They would just go to the company and say, we need this service repaired, and award really a contract to do that service directly, very specific to the activity that's being done. So when it's a pressing emergency, then the government will use a non-competitive approach, because it does delay the safety and the cost effectiveness for public interest. If there are lower dollar value based on the actual type of work, so if it's for architectural engineering services as for international development projects, then the departments that deal with international assistance can look at suppliers very specifically to say, we're looking for your assistance to help with a relief mission to Haiti in terms of providing engineering services or architectural services for Haiti being paid for by the Canadian government. If it's not in the public interest, so if it's something dealing with national security, then it may be something that either D&D, CSIS, or Canada Border Services Agency would go to a supplier directly based on their intellectual property, as well as the need for privacy. Most purchases by those 3 departments for national security are usually made in public tendering, but if it's something very specific that needs to be that has a higher security level, then they wouldn't put it out to a competitive approach. They would be approaching very specific companies that they already know have that capacity and work with them in terms of dealing with the purchase. And if we know that it's a known supplier, so there is no ability to purchase that product by a third party, then copyright, licensing, and patent laws do take place that we're unable to use a company's product without their express consent. So if we know that something is owned by only one supplier, then we would go back to that single supplier to actually do the work. So we have currently transitioned to a new website. So similar to the province, there's been some transitional. So prior to the beginning of October, there used to be the website buyandsell.gc.ca. Our primary site is now Canada Buys for tenders. So we do encourage people to change their bookmarks, update their bookmarks, to actually look at canadabuys.ca. There you'll be able to look for tenders and identify all electronic procurement solutions through the Canada Buys website. Buy and Sell website will still have some information and will identify some of those, the differences between the two. If you were previously receiving notifications on Buy and Sell, unfortunately, the transitional from one site to another doesn't allow for the email notifications to be recreated for you on your behalf. So we do ask businesses to go in and recreate their notifications on the Canada Buy site. So buyandsell.gc.ca is still a resource. So there it'll provide you with information on support. So in terms of how to sell to government, how to register as a supplier. It'll also be a main page in terms of searching for opportunities. It'll then redirect you to Canada Buys, understanding our policies and guidelines, various resources in terms of identifying historical data, as well as any federal initiatives. So accessible procurement, green procurement strategy, small business procurement, controlled goods programming. So Buy and Sell will still have historical as well as current content. So it is used more for supporting resources, and then Canada Buys will be for tender searches and submissions. So on all of our websites for Canada or for Buy and Sell, you will see a large yellow banner. talking about Canada Buys. So Canada Buys is now the official source for government tenders and award notices. So you're now currently able to verify both current as well as historical data. We do encourage people to also then register with SAP Ariba. So similar to the province of Nova Scotia, we are now using Ariba Discovery. We encourage businesses to proactively register within SAP Ariba. It is a two-step process in terms of adding the federal government. So you register within SAP Ariba Discovery through the Canada Buys website. And then once you are going through the portal through Canada Buys, then once you finish your registration within SAP Ariba, there will be a secondary registration for the federal government. If you are already registered with SAP Ariba Discovery, then you're just having to either do a search for Government of Canada procurement to add us and then do the secondary request, or you're looking to just contact the Canada Buys team. They will proactively push the notification for the second step notification for registering in SAP Ariba. And the reverse would hold true. If you're looking at the federal government first as a buyer, you are then able to add the province of Nova Scotia within SAP Ariba. So it does allow for businesses to proactively look for both federal and provincial procurement in one area. So this is currently what we call our government electronic tendering services. So GETS. So this will be the official source for federal as well as NATO, as well as it will be a repository for provincial. So the current visual shows us currently awards for tenders. You're able to do more filtering. So the filter drop down box does allow you to filter by region. So you can filter by Canada, NATO in terms of the North American Trade Agreement. You'll also see other European countries in terms of being able to start to filter by European countries. As well, you will notice when you're looking for procurement under organization, you'll actually see provincial authorities as well. So you'll see provincial procurement searching under the province. So similar to their program for tons, it will allow you to see other programs here. So rather than having to search procurement opportunities for every province, eventually as provinces move over or we're pulling their information onto this platform, it will allow you to search under one website resource. That's just to look for the opportunities. You're still having to register for SAP Ariba Discovery in terms of doing your bid submissions, both at a federal as well as a provincial level. So the benefits of using the government electronic tendering service, it is free to go through the tendering to look at a tender, as well as to go into SAP Ariba. So SAP Ariba, by entering through Canada Buys or through the Nova Scotia procurement site, it does provide you with access for free. If you're external to Canada and you're using an external provider like Merck's, then they are pulling information from these sites and then charging you for their additional services. We do recommend people use our government website for Canada Buys as the authoritative, just in case there are changes to a tender that you do receive the notification from our site versus a delay that may take place if you're using an external provider. It does allow you to use plain language as well as filtering, and then it does allow you to also filter by the various types of contracts, be it previous contracts, standing offers, and supply arrangements. And similar to the provincial program, you are able to set yourself up for notifications based on the type of product or service you sell and the region that you're looking to sell to. So if you're looking to sell just in Atlantic Canada, you can pre-identify all 4 provinces, the product or service that you sell, and then from there you'll receive notification when the request is over 25,000 or over 40,000. So in terms of the difference between the two sites, Canada Buys will be the site to search for tenders as well as to register for the electronic procurement solution. So within Canada Buys is the link to register for SAP Ariba. If you're already registered with SAP Ariba, if you were to actively click a tender and be redirected to SAP Ariba, it would then just ask you to register or to log into your SAP Ariba account. In terms of submitting your bid, you're wanting to ensure that you have done the two-step process within SAP Ariba in terms of SAP Ariba, in terms of your registration, but also adding the federal government as a department. And then buyandSell.gc.ca. There it'll be information as to how to register as a business, the procurement policies, key procurement contacts, initiatives and programs. It is currently where we host our event and seminar page, as well as procurement applications. So with the change from Canada Buys from Buy and Sell, the events and seminar link may change over to Canada Buys as well. But currently, if you go on either site, you're able to find any events that our regional office here in Atlantic Canada is hosting. So in terms of becoming a supplier, we do identify suppliers again through what we call our supplier registration information system. There, you're using your business number that you've received from Canada Revenue Agency. So again, if you're incorporated, you already have your 9-digit incorporation number. If you're non-incorporated, but you have an HST or a payroll account, then you already have a business number. If you're a sole proprietor and you don't actually have any of those accounts with CRA, you are just having to contact them first. That way we can assign a number outside of your social insurance number. So Canada Revenue Agency does provide you with a business number. That way you're then able to register with our procurement business number through our department. That way you're then able to be identified as a supplier, and then at a later point, at some point through a registration process, you then become a vendor where you would submit information in terms of payment if we do a contract with you in order for us to pay you. Again, it is a free process. You're wanting to do the registration using your legal entity name. So if your legal entity is a numbered company or an acronym and it's incorporated, then that is the registration number that you would use, because our system does link with Canada Revenue. If you're a sole proprietor, that's where we're wanting you to be pre-registered with CRA. That way we're not using your social insurance number in terms of a business number for your account. Again, there's two types of registration. So there is the supplier, and then there is the SAP Ariba. So SAP Ariba is a second registration separate from the supplier. The supplier registration database does allow our departments and agencies across Canada to actually look at your supplier information from the backside of the database to see your product or service that you provide and the area that you sell it to, as well as your up-to-date contact information. That way, if it is below the threshold, then a department and agency can then reach out to you to ask you to submit a bid or a proposal for a tender when it's below the 25 or the 40,000. Without being in the supplier registration, then departments and agencies would be having to look on social media to find your company info. So sometimes that isn't the best way for us to find suppliers, is to use external sites like Yahoo or Google or Bing. By having your supplier registration on your product, it then allows us to know that you've self-identified and we have your up-to-date contact, where on a social media site, it may not be as up-to-date. So we do encourage businesses to register, even though they may not be actively looking for tenders, but it may provide you with an opportunity to have a department or an agency reach out to you. So in terms of registering within Canada Buys, we do have some very quick steps in terms of how to register your business. We do have a checklist, we do have a guide, and then we do have a separate help desk for the Canada Buys team. But there it does allow you to go specifically to actively register your SAP account. Again, if you already have one with the province or are dealing internationally, then it does allow you to modify and add the federal government as a supplier or the province of Nova Scotia as a supplier, or sorry, as a buyer. In terms of finding opportunities, so one of the questions that I noticed in the chat was how do we depart, how do you identify opportunities or the buyers? So we do have a public website for what we call our employee directory. There you're able to actually look for contact information for departments, but a lot of departments have staff in regional offices. So there you're able to reach out to a regional office and ask them for the contact information for the local manager or the procurement officer or the purchasing officer within their department, either on a regional basis or on a pan-Atlantic. So for some departments here in Atlantic Canada, it's either a regional office within the province or it's a pan-Atlantic office for Atlantic Canada. So the RCMP, as an example, they do have a headquarters in Nova Scotia, but depending on the type of purchase, it may be for across Atlantic. It would still maybe be for individual detachments, but the purchasing is done through a central office. There we do encourage businesses to reach out proactively and speak with businesses, or sorry, with departments and agencies in your community or throughout the region to find out whether or not they purchase. And that's something that we can help identify as well. So historically, we're able to look at the Canada Buys site, identify your product or service and see what departments and agencies have purchased that product or service in the past, because they would be most likely be the same departments to purchase your product now. And you're also wanting to ensure that if you are actively on social media with your website, that it contains what you provide. That way, if we are looking on social media for your website, if you're not identified within our supplier database, that we're able to identify your product or service there as well. So again, Canada Buys is live. So for a period back in September, we were in beta mode, which allowed us to go back to the old site had there been any issues. But at this point, you're able to identify active procurement tenders as well as historic tenders for as long as, so all of the information that used to be historically on buy and sell has physically been moved within Canada Buys, and then depending on where the data is hosted, it may redirect you to a historical data that is archived on Canada or on buy and sell. So to learn more about the procurement process, there are a few things that we do suggest, and with when you do receive the decks, then you're able to then click on these hyperlinks. So how to register, how to log into your account, how to signal your interest in partnering for active tenders, how to register for the professional services, how to register and log into SAP Ariba, as well as a checklist when you're registering. And then in terms of Canada Buys, there's also some, so currently we use a program called Goods and Services Identification Number, GSIN. As we progress forward because of international trades, we will be eventually using more codes calling the UNSPSC, the United Nations Standard Product Services Codes. So there are a few links and there are some tools to help you identify your product or service based on both the goods and services code or the UNSPC code. So similar to your business having a industry classification, your product and service as well. So it can go very specific. So if I was looking for veterinary services, I could put in veterinary services under both and have very distinct codes for both. Within the veterinary service, if I also am looking to sell our own dog food, then dog food has its own, cat food has its own code. So some products have very specific codes, or they come under a general catchment. So it's helping you identify that. And if you're having difficulty, that's where our office is able to assist. As well, going forward, some of our procurement you're having to do your submission on Ariba Discovery. Others will be through either email or through Canada Post Canex in terms of replying to suppliers. But going forward, a lot more of our tender requests will require you to do your submission on Ariba Discovery. So as well, we do have a lot of supporting documents just in terms of selling to the government. Again, how to register, how to prepare your bid, as well as our service guide. And then we do have a host of seminars and events in terms of just doing business, finding opportunities, as well as on bidding on opportunities. In terms of seminars, if you're saying, well, a seminar does provide a little bit of an overview, but it doesn't allow me to to ask personal questions, we do have the ability to meet with you face to face if you're in the region. Unfortunately, we're unable to travel extensively for just single meetings, but using today's technology of either MS Teams or Zoom, we're able to do virtual meetings with clients across Atlantic Canada based on your schedule. So we're able then to work between our two schedules to find a time that we're then able to talk very specifically about your business. We also do have an info line answered by our national office in Ontario, where there you're able to ask procurement inquiries, and there you're also able to contact them if you're unable to reach somebody in Atlantic, and then we're able then to do a follow-up. So our regional contact information is here, and again, Allison will be sharing our contact information. Nos services sont dans les deux langues, alors I do apologize for not identifying that at the beginning. So our services at the federal level are in the two official languages. So if you do have, if you are francophone, you can call us and contact us for services in the language of choice. If by any reason you are looking for services across Canada, then we are able to help you both here in Atlantic, or if you're traveling at any point and unsure of what services are available in other regions, then we do have 6 regional offices across Canada. So Ontario does have 2, one just for the Ontario region, and then one for the capital region up in Ottawa, the province of Quebec, Western Canada, and then Pacific. And that would be time now for Q&A. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for the great information that you shared. We do have a couple questions in the chat. So the first one is from Diane. Does Nova Scotia have a policy to procure a certain percentage from Indigenous owned businesses?
Hello, and thank you for your question, Diane. At present, we don't have a specific policy, although we are working on developing something either similar to the Government of Canada or something that makes more sense for Nova Scotia. We have piloted some projects where we have required a certain percentage of labor be part of the build of construction projects, and a certain percentage of purchases come from the local area. So we are moving towards trying to encourage more interaction between all types of businesses, and including those that are from diverse populations.
And then she does have a follow-up question. Is there a difference between SAP Ariba and Ariba Discovery?
Yes, so I can answer that, Paul. SAP Ariba is the company that manages the e-bidding platform. They are the ones that they do all of the work. Posting the bid, that's where you submit your bid, and that's where the bid can be evaluated. So that's SAP Ariba. Within that, there is something called Ariba Discovery, and that is for suppliers to enter in their information and be part of the ability. It gives you the ability to bid. So you have your Ariba Discovery account, which is attached to SAP Ariba. So they're kind of, they work in tandem. You can't bid on an opportunity that's listed in SAP Ariba unless you have an Ariba Discovery account.
One of the things to note as well is, as we go through international trade agreements, more provinces and territories and municipalities are adding themselves within SAP Ariba. So as an example, the province of Nova Scotia, the federal government, if you're wanting to do things with the municipality of Toronto or Ottawa, Canada Revenue as an external agency is also on SAP Ariba, even though the federal government is now moving within SAP Ariba Discovery. So as you progress into SAP Ariba and the new electronic platform, you will see both federal, provincial, and municipal opportunities within your account. So if you're on SAP Ariba and you've identified your opportunities here in Canada, then you'll then receive maybe requests by other departments and agencies at a provincial level from the city of Toronto or Mississauga or other regions, because you're on that new platform. So we do encourage businesses in Nova Scotia and Atlantic to actually be proactive and be within SAP Ariba and to have their information ready within Discovery, because it will open you up to that ability to sell interprovincially as well as nationally, as well as internationally.
Yeah, and I'll also add that there's large number of private sector companies that use SAP Ariba. So you won't only find public sector work, but you could be notified of opportunities in the private sector as well. And those opportunities may come with a fee to bid, but I know that all of our public sector or provincial ones don't.
And same here, if you're applying for something at a federal level, most of the contracts as well do not require you to submit a fee to submit a bid.
Perfect. Thank you both. And then we do have a question from Mark, if it would be possible to share the contact details of those that are in the department level of purchasing. Not sure.
So at a federal level, because there is a lot of transition with staff, we do have an employment directory. So if you were to do a public search on a social media site for government employment directory, it will provide you with all of the federal departments. The only thing that we do identify is that the Department of Defense, CSIS, RCMP do not identify their staff due to security, but what they would do if you were to look for, say, procurement or purchasing within the RCMP, it would give you a general email or phone number.
Yeah, and from a provincial perspective, we do list all of the procurement specialists and contract managers and anybody else that works in our own division. We list them and we list the names or the commodities that they're responsible for. And those are the folks that work directly with our department, so they would know who in government is purchasing what. The difficulty with providing a list of everybody that buys in the provincial government anyway, there's the chance that anybody in government could buy. So it would be almost impossible to give you a list of everybody in government. So the first step would be to start with the procurement folks, or if you want to take a look on our website under the current tenders and do some historical searching, usually there is always a contact, a department contact, or somebody's name there that is responsible for that procurement. So you should be able to find out through that mechanism who is responsible for the buying, and usually they have the contact information there that you can reach out to them directly.
Perfect. Rob has a question or just a note. It says that they are registered on TONS and they received an email that the system changed, but it seems that the new system wasn't working or that the link kind of was missing when they went to register for the new system.
Yeah, so we had initially thought that our system would be up and running by September. Unfortunately, our developers are still working on tweaking a few things and getting things to the point that we want them. So that is delayed, but the TON system that is working, that you're registered for right now, should still be working as it was. We're in the middle of creating more communication to let you know when the new system will be up and running. But it should be within the next month or so, fingers crossed.
And I noticed Rob had a question earlier. So how does the department know the price? So a lot of times departments don't know the price. They're looking at the quantity or the type of service being offered. If a department is looking for one desk for a new staff member in Yarmouth, then it's a single purchase. If the department is looking to replace 500 desks, then they're looking at a larger purchase. So at that point, they know that the price will either be close to or exceed the threshold amount. So at that point, they know that it will go to tender. If it's something very quick, so if I'm a staff member and I'm driving down to the valley and I realize that I need a USB, then I'm not going to put a tender out. Then I would literally ensure that I have the ability as a staff member or reach out to the department to say, I need someone to run over to Staples and buy me a flash drive, if it's something that they're allowed to purchase directly within their purchasing authority. Sometimes departments will still have some rules in terms of what can be purchased and what can't be, similar to the province where they've got various thresholds at 25,000. With us, departments, depending on their purchasing power, can purchase up to 5,000 on a credit card for a very specific purchase because it has a very specific urgency, or it's something that's a one of versus going to a standing offer. A lot of times though, we will look at standing offers to ensure that if it is something that we would normally go through a standing offer. So if I do need that USB, then they'll look and say, oh, well, we don't actually have a standing offer with Staples. We'll actually have a USB sent to you by Grand and Toy, as an example.
Perfect, thank you. And then this question is for Paul. You indicated that a sole proprietor would have to contact CRA first to get a number. Is that a business registration number or something specifically for procurement only?
Yep. So when you're a small business, regardless of federal or provincial entities, as a supplier, currently, if you're not registered with Canada Revenue, then it's because you're below the threshold of 30,000. So Canada Revenue does have a threshold when you're a small supplier before you need to be registered with an HST account. The federal government, because we would want you to charge us HST on your services, you're therefore required to register with Canada Revenue Agency for a business number. At that point, it's your business number that you're using in terms of communicating with our department versus your social insurance number. If you're below 30,000, then in terms of privacy, you're not wanting to put your social insurance number on your invoices to your clients. It would be your business number, especially if you were charging them tax. But in order to charge them tax, you need to have an HST account.
Perfect. That seems to be all the questions that we have in the chat. I don't know if you guys kind of have any like final thoughts or advice or anything like that, but we can take a moment to do that before we wrap up.
I was going to say, we are in the process here in Halifax for those that may travel back and forth from the Western Ren or have staff here in Halifax. We are looking at doing what we call a reverse trade show with various federal and provincial entities on November the 17th. We're just confirming the location. So once the location is identified, it is being looked at the 17th in the afternoon. We'll communicate that with Allison. That way she can share it with all of the participants today, as well as other businesses in the Western region or abroad, because I know that some of you may not be actually within the REN, but we're registering today where it was a virtual event.
And likewise, once we get final confirmation of our launch date for our new website, I'll forward that information to Allison and she can make sure that all of you get it. I know, Rob, you would have received that information. And if you want to follow up with any other questions, certainly do that. You can do that afterwards too.
Perfect. Well, thank you both to our presenters so much for sharing all this lovely information for everyone. And thank you to all that attended. We know that you took time out of your day to join us here virtually. So that's, we really appreciate that. And as mentioned, we'll be sharing all the slides and contact info for all of us here today so that you can reach out to us if you have any further questions or anything that we can help you with. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
See you, everybody.
Bye.